the sleep trackers, the importance of sleep, we start to treat it like it's fragile, that it ends up having a paradoxical effect and making us not sleep. The brain is weird. You have to demonstrate to the brain that you're okay. You can't just say, oh, I'm going to be fine. You have to actually physically go through these things. You have to go through the hangovers. You have to go through the days of no sleep. And you have to live your life exactly like you were going to live it beforehand. And the more you do that, the more the brain just goes, I guess this isn't an issue I have to keep warning this person about.
Welcome to the Eat, Play, Crush podcast. I am your host, Mary Shanuda. I had made a suggestion about how much do you think that back pain could possibly, because it was persistent, he couldn't figure it out, could be tied to emotions. And he was like, maybe, maybe not. And then I talked about an experience I had where I had sudden lower back pain that came on within like 10 minutes. And it was happening while I was on a negotiation call with someone I really don't like and don't trust. And at first I thought my kidneys were doing something crazy, and it persisted for about a week, lights out nerve pain down my leg, could barely move anywhere. And I was going to get physical therapy, and I had done physical therapy at least once or twice, and I was going for the third, and I was waiting outside Myo Detox across the street at the cafe, and I was super early. Turns out one of my clients was in town. One of my basketball players was in town and was nearby. So we met up and I hung out with him and his daughter for a couple hours before my appointment. And as soon as I got up to go to the appointment, my back pain was completely gone. And I kind of chuckled. I was like, oh, for me, if I want to be woo-woo-y about it, I was hanging out with people that I enjoy, that bring me peace, that override the challenges that come with my business. And I found some connection there. And because of what you're navigating with your therapist, I'm just curious how much of it could be related to an emotional response or emotional door that needs to be opened.
I definitely hear what you're saying. I think that there are times where, your muscles just like automatically tense up around certain people. And that can definitely cause some kind of discomfort. For this specific thing, I kind of like know the root cause. I started like rolling around, lifting up heavy men in jujitsu, on top of like lifting and running and all that stuff. So I don't think that for this particular thing, it's that. However, I will say, going back to my therapist, I am trying to navigate with all of my issues, how much the OCD exacerbates whatever it is that I'm going through. Because whether it's sleep, whether it's a toothache, whether it's whatever, the brain is just constantly like sending signals about that pain. And the more you obviously focus and think about the pain, obviously, the more you're going to feel it. So that's where it kind of does relate to it. At the same time, because that's what I'm like, how do I have all these problems that like every week it's something different? Am I just doing it? Am I just like giving it to myself? Am I just
this is so Vinny, by the way, this dialogue.
This is my internal dialogue. But yeah. I'm growing. I wouldn't have even made the distinction between this stuff. Like, is this the brain or is it me or whatever? Because I'm not faking it. Like I literally, go through these kind of issues. So
right. No, and I've been there. For context, we've created a really good friendship. Yeah, I've been there where I forget what the part. I think maybe it was your birthday or something like that, and I was in a completely different room, and somebody came over and was like, "Hey, Vin needs to talk to you right now," and I was like, "What?" Like, okay. And I went upstairs, and again, if you don't want to share, so we don't have to share this, but I went upstairs.
Oh no, I've told this story a million times.
Okay, and you were just basically just like cowering. You're like, "Hey, I'm having a lot of anxiety right now, and could you just sit with me and talk with me?" And it's like, number one, it feels really special to be trusted in that way with a friend. And two, it's very brave of you to recognize that in the moment, the best you can do is retreat, and then also have the wherewithal to be like, there's somebody in this house that can help me feel better, and I'm going to show my cards, and I'm going to send another man to go. I'm going to tell this man I don't feel good and go find that person. Like that to me is man. Well, because there's this idea of like, can we share our weaknesses? as men, do they feel comfortable sharing their weaknesses or their vulnerability with other men? And I had never seen you in that. We've talked about anxiety, we've intellectualized anxiety, but when I went upstairs, you were like, you look like a little kid, like, hey, and we talked through it, and then you ended up coming back downstairs, and
No.
you were,
Hold on. I have to give some clarification to this story.
Yeah.
So first of all, there have been many times where I've been, well, not many. There have been a few times where it was an anxiety situation that your friendship and your presence has helped me through. That was one of them. However, that night was the first time that I ever got wasted and tried to smoke weed at the same time.
Oh shit!
So
I completely missed the boat on that.
You overlooked that. Like I said, we'll go back to the other times where I was dealing with insomnia.
Yeah,
and me and you hung out, or lady issues, and me and you hung out. But that time, I was completely cross-faded for the first time. I've told this story so many times. I had just bought my house. I decided to have a party like 2 days in from my birthday, and I was having. I missed my own party. I missed my own birthday. It was the best party ever that I didn't get to experience because I was drinking and I had bartenders and I had friends there and I had everybody there. There was
Everyone was great.
There.
Yeah,
it was amazing. It was a great fun. I'm glad you enjoyed it. So I decided to take 2 puffs of weed because like this girl that I was with, this girl that was there, she makes it look so easy. She like smokes weed all day. She's like one of my friends. She's like mad cool about it. And I was like, yeah, give me that. Like it smelled so good. And then next thing you know, like I started to like lose like all motor function of my body. That wasn't even like a paranoid anxiety thing. I physically was like losing myself and I knew that I was about to pass out and that I was like, retreating into another dimension. And I'm being a little dramatic. And when I was upstairs...
You're storytelling. Come on, you're a storyteller.
I'm storytelling, yeah. And when I was upstairs, I knew that I had to just like figure this out. I had a bunch of strangers in my house and I had to figure out how to get everybody out of my house, lock up this party, and just like survive the night, okay? So my brain, and this is what my doctor talks about, whatever little bits and pieces of me that were left, were like, okay, who are the best people to trust in this scenario to kind of help me here? And Cook was one of them, and you were the only other one. In a room full of Hollywood weirdos, I was like, get Mary up here right now. I need help. And she's the only person that I trust. So yes, your story was accurate, but it did have that major part. And then, what was funny was that I didn't spend the whole night like paranoid or freaking out. Like I truly just passed out. And that's what I needed to do. I needed to just pass out. I think a lot of people did relate to me there because they were like, because again, I was drunk and high and all that stuff. But it was,
which for context, when you're drunk and high, you're not that much different presenting, right? You're still chill. Like you would nobody would know.
Right. That's the scary part, right? That's the scary part. But, and again, I think that my anxiety, I have to work on how much of it is the drunken high part, how much of it is the back pain, how much of it is the thing, and then how much is my brain now coming in and making the problem 10 times worse. It's like, am I giving myself a headache about having a headache?
Sure.
And sometimes yes, but in that case, no, like I was truly passing out. And that was, thank God I had you there and some real friends there that were human beings that you could trust to kind of like just protect me and my house and the next day I woke up and everything was locked up and clear and I wasn't robbed. I was alive. Everything was good.
Yes. The worst did not happen. And then you guys went crazy on the tiramisu because I got pictures and photos of that block of dairy-free.
I had that tiramisu. I was living off of that for like 6 months.
So
it was so good. Oh my God.
It was pretty good. I was really proud of it. It was really beautiful too. I was in a bakery when I was making it. And I just remember like taking a pause and be like, this is a work of freaking art. What do I make Vinny for his birthday that's keto? And it's like, he's Italian. I'll make him a keto paleo tiramisu.
And tiramisu is my favorite dessert,
Which there's a few topics I want to hit. One being how we met. So you were going keto was this while you were on the show or off season? Like when did you decide to like step into that realm?
So we did Jersey Shore from like 2009 to 2013, and I was not, into my health, my diet. I was kind of like used to fluctuate with weight, and then in the off season or in the off years of Jersey Shore, 2013 to 2015, 16, I got really heavy. My yo-yo dieting no longer worked for me, like where I would just be like, oh, let me just eat during the winter and then, I'll work it off for a couple months during the summer. That's how I always lived my life, like up until that point. And that didn't work for me. One day I looked in the mirror and I was 200 pounds, 25% body fat, maybe even more. That's just what the stupid scale said. And, if I don't really use this page anymore, but if you go to my Keto Guido page, there are a lot of before and after pictures. You can show them in the episode if you want. And I was really, really heavy. And I was like, wow, like this is a different kind of like extra weight that I'm holding on here, And at that time, I was looking for every single diet in the world to do. I tried to do like little Weight Watcher things where they sent little meals, juice cleanses, like you name it. I remember I was actually listening to the Adam Carolla show, and there was a guy named Vinny Tortorich, and he's big in that space of keto and no.
I've been on his show. Stuff. Yeah, he's great.
Because I used to listen to Adam Carolla at the time. So I wasn't even like seeking this out. And he started talking about eating bacon, eating butter and all that stuff. And I'm just like, huh. So I just like literally tried it. And the weight started to like fly off when I just eliminated sugar and grains from my diet. And then at the same time, I got into Rogan. And then he started having like every keto paleo expert on the show at the same time. This is back in like 2015, 2016. I heard him mention you on the show, and every time they used to bring up a product and stuff, I used to like try it out. So then, Fat Fudge became like part of my regimen of things. And then at that same time, Jersey Shore came back as Jersey Shore Family Vacation, like all in this like same little thing. And like, so I just went through this like health transformation like a year before, or not even. And I was like preaching keto and everything. Now, again, this is back in like 2000 and I think it was 16 or something like that, where keto and stuff wasn't like a huge thing. It was a kind of new on the scene. And then, I just was like shredding weight, didn't even have to count anything, no macros, no calories. It just like my body just went through some kind of adjustment where all of that extra weight came off, and I ended up losing around like, 50 pounds.
When you were keto, when you first started going keto and you were making the decision to focus more on fats, you were, and this is a question, were eliminating alcohol, sugars, carbohydrates?
I don't even know if I was eliminating alcohol, but I definitely was eliminating 99% sugars and carbs.
And that's being Italian, big part of the diet.
Yeah, but like at the same time, I know my body and I know what makes me feel good or not. And, it's like, I knew that like eating dishes of pasta like never were good for my gut microbiome. You know what I mean? So I would gladly just like house some steak and some cheese and some salami and stuff like that. So adjusting to the diet was actually fun. And we'll cut to now, but now I can't eat even the way I ate when I made that transformation, because my body no longer reacts to dairy the same way or that amount of calories the same way. But back then, for whatever the hell reason it was, I was just eating like anything I wanted that was like just fat and was losing weight.
There's a case to be made. So like my role is always like, oh, why is somebody responding this way? And then how can I reverse engineer it in addition to whatever programming? So there's the element of calories in, calories out, which we talk about. And then there's an element of hormone balance, nutrient density in the body, and then gut biome. And so if, for example, you had SIBO or you had H. pylori, there's a case to be made by limiting the carbs and the sugar that you're treating those symptoms, which is allowing you to digest better and feel better on top of the calorie deficit, because you are eliminating carbs and sugar, and people grossly underestimate the amount of calories in carbs and sugars. And then there's also the idea of it could just be straight calories in, calories out. So while you felt like you were eating more calories because it's fats and how we view fats, you're actually eating less. And my whole thing is paleo you. What works for me may not work for you. And it's always going to be a combination of calorie reduction, energy increase, and something happening in the gut biome. I think, and this is another topic I want to get into. So when you say for whatever reason, maybe it's good to have a little bit of an understanding of what that reason is. But for you, which is like, we'll call it like everyday Joe type of thing, like you're not a athlete trying to win a championship, knowing just enough to still create good
just
habits.
A stripper.
Just to have good habits and go about your day without getting in the weeds is really powerful, because one of the things that you did mention on the podcast with your therapist is how, you had to have a strict protocol. And if you deviated from it, like you'd sort of unravel. And that's my biggest qualm with the space that I'm in, is that I'll get asked very complex, detailed questions, or people are so rigid that they don't actually live their life, but they haven't mastered the fundamentals, or they underestimate their body's ability to adapt, their brain's ability to adapt. And I'm curious, like what, and maybe this has to just go with personality type, when you started to go down that path, what caused you to attach the rigidity to that? Is that just the nature of who you are, or did you feel like this was the only way to be successful in your weight loss journey?
When I did the keto first, right? First of all, what you're talking about is my perfectionism. So perfectionism is one of my, like, the core issue of everything. It's like, even the OCD is like constantly just like monitoring and checking of like why I'm not perfect. And that's what I loved about the keto and the grain free at first, was because I didn't have to monitor anything. I know you were saying about, I'm a caloric deficit guy. So like that's where I'm at. I think I was in a little bit of a caloric deficit. I used to play more basketball, so maybe I used to move around a little bit more, but no, there was something with the hormones or something going on that just like, I definitely was eating a lot. I never wanted for anything. I would like house like a steak this big every night and stuff. And if I did that now, my body would be like, hell no. So I think that's what I loved about it. And then when that stopped working, and I did have to start counting my calories and wearing, and use my Apple Watch and stuff like that. For someone like me, the diet thing never really affected my mental health that much when it came to caloric deficit and counting. Some people it might. Some people, again, all that tracking and monitoring and stuff like that, like, and it did. I definitely did alter my life and get regimented with it. But that's just what it is for diet. Again, it never really took me down a really dark path or anything. It did more so for sleep. Sleep was the one where the more that I tracked it and the more that I monitor it, the worse that it would get. You know what I mean? Because sleep is actually paradoxical. Diet kind of isn't. You kind of have to do that to lose weight. You have to kind of be in a caloric deficit. However, if you do take it too far, and there were times, trust me, where, like especially during my show in Vegas, I would be in great shape. And then like I'd be afraid to go get dinner at nighttime because I didn't want to go over my calories or something like that, So, for the diet, it has to be like a little bit of a mixture, a little bit of a balance. I'm not going to say, yeah, eat whatever you want. Like you do have to monitor, you do have to check your calories and make sure you're in a caloric deficit, because most people aren't. But at the same time, be realistic and try not to be such a perfectionist about it,
That's what makes everybody uniquely them. And for you especially, people have a perception of you because they see elements of you, or they're like, oh, he's a reality star and a stripper in Vegas. Like, I know everything.
Not anymore.
I'm
not a retired stripper.
Oh, we're retired now. But it's like, and then, you're pretty active on social media, but If people aren't paying attention to your quote unquote weirdness, they miss the thing that makes you so special, makes you so
Yeah.
relatable, and it actually makes you really human because
Well,
you can get accused.
now
Go
the
ahead.
best part is that people hate me people hate me and love me clip to clip now because because they don't know what to make of me. They're like, is this guy like, is he like a sweetheart, mama's boy? Is he like a sex addict? Is he like, a fuck boy? Is, whatever? Because I'm just me. You know what I mean? I'm just
You're
me.
just
And
figuring it out. And anyone that doesn't know what to
oh
make
no,
of
I'm
you
not
has to
figuring anything
remember.
out. They're
Right.
figuring it
No,
out.
no, no. Like you're living life and you're figuring things out as you go about life and you're implementing all the tools that are needed and you're being honest. And anyone that's trying to figure you out in that moment has to remember they're also figuring it out. Like
Yeah, but on
chill.
social media, you're taking apart these little things, and it's just hilarious to me. I am like, my main thing is the world of comedy. I love comedy more than reality. I'm friends with comedians. I do stand up, open mics. I go to school for comedy. I did improv, like all that. And so I'm just like always clowning around. But people take everything you say so seriously and dissect it. And I don't know when I was anointed this like serious monk figure that has to be like so fucking serious about everything. So like all the time I'm just like fucking around. So like again, 1 second they love me, 1 second they don't. But either way, I'm gonna be real. I'm not gonna. I talk the same way to like on this podcast that if we were at dinner, we would talk the same way. And sometimes people can't handle that. So whatever it is, I'm just being me and I'm being real. What you see is what you're gonna get. Can we
Anyways,
go
to
back
the
to the sleep
question. Yeah.
question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, so a lot of my issues of anxiety and this like really high level of anxiety that I do get comes from me being sleep deprived for many days in a row. It's a pattern. Anytime that I've really gotten into like a serious bout of anxiety that's beyond just like an anxiety attack, almost like it's just like you feel disassociated, you feel depressed, you feel just not yourself. Like you're like having an out of body experience usually comes from like a little bit of like no sleeping. So it's kind of like a pattern. And like it happened to me in college, it happened to me while filming the show, because these are all environments where like I'm not really sleeping well. So I think like a big root cause for me has always been sleep, right? And I had a really bad bout of insomnia when I was doing one of the dating shows where I literally didn't sleep for 2 days in a row, zero sleep, in the midst of a production where the whole entire thing is riding on my shoulders because I'm the main guy that all the girls are dating. There's no like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, let's let like, Paulie D cover this one or something like that. It's like, no, I'm the main guy. And I didn't know what to do. I couldn't sleep. I was like, I'm
What
laying
was
here.
was you just ruminating over things? Like what was going through your
No,
mind?
just couldn't sleep. It was just like an association that had built up of like trying to go to sleep means that you are awake now. You're just like, that's what happens. And of course, then you just start ruminating about not sleeping. So when you start ruminating about not sleeping, you're making the problem worse.
Mm-hmm.
So once I did that, this happens to a lot of people that have insomnia. I started to fear sleep. When you fear sleep, sends you into fight or flight. So as soon as you hit the pillow at night, you're getting into fight or flight automatically.
Wait. So go back to that. You fear sleep. What does that
Yes.
mean?
You fear the act of going to sleep. You fear not being able to sleep.
So you fear
You want to
bedtime.
sleep so bad
Yeah.
that it's sending you into, it's so paradoxical and backwards. It's sending you into fight or flight because it's so important to you that, it just became like this like monumental event.
Are you having any physical manifestations? Are you having like sweats, any heart racing, any other symptoms?
I mean, not really. I mean, not sometimes I would actually have panic attacks like in the midst of like an insomnia kind of episode. Those are very just like come and go specific type thing. And by the way, people, there's a light at the end of this tunnel of like me kind of, and Mary keeps talking about the episode with my therapist. You can hear a lot about how I navigated my way, quote unquote, out of that. But I'm just telling you, this is how it got really bad when I was dealing with it,
This was the first dating show or the second dating show? Because you
This
guys
was
have
like
done 2 or 3?
We've done 3 seasons. I think this was the last one where where I didn't sleep for like 2 days straight.
Did we actually answer the question of how you maintain your structure when you're on the show recording, when everyone's partying?
Well, we didn't.
Because
I don't
like
know
I
if we
know you
answered
took
that.
fat fudge and you stayed keto for a big part of one of the shows because Polly roasted fat fudge on one of the shows. So I know you
Did he?
stayed.
Oh, did he?
Yeah,
That's good
there's
press.
the whole
That's good press.
confessional where he's like, Vinny's over
What
here
is
eating
this?
frosting.
They hate my keto snacks. By the way, all of them are like keto and like carnivore now. Everything that they hate on, they end up doing later on.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
all the grain-free snacks and everything are all in their pantries now. I'm a trendsetter. Yeah, no, it's hard to have structure. That first season back in Miami, it was a little bit of an adjustment, but I was just like, it was so new and I was happy to be on TV again on Jersey Shore Family Vacation. But I kind of just like went with the flow. I wasn't really worried about it. But as the years progressed, I definitely started to have issues filming because now I'm like where I need my 8 hours of sleep. I need my certain diet. I need this. I need that.
The writer.
Yeah, I get the
Someone
mental
else's
writer.
writer is like all the different alcohols and junk foods they
Yeah.
want. Vinny's writer, I need a sleep 8 pod. I need
my fat fudge loaded up. I need all that. I need like grain-free chips and stuff.
So Jersey Shore is well known, right? I don't know anyone who hasn't heard Jersey Shore. And what's funny is when you guys first came on the scene and you had DTF, I had made a shirt called DTP, Down to Paleo. And never in a million years would I think that I would even be working or get to know half the people I do know in my career now. If someone lives on an island and has never heard of the show, how would you describe what is the Jersey Shore to someone who's never heard of it before?
Okay, but we have to circle back to the light at the end of these tunnels.
We will leave nothing.
Sound like all I'm saying is just all the things that make me crazy without how I worked through them or got better.
Yes.
It's just like this guy just has this most miserable life. Okay,
also, the other thing that's really great about you is you like to follow a sequence, right?
Yes.
And it's almost like if we
we're just opening doors and not closing them.
Yes. Like the tab is left open. You're like, I can't move on the tab. We got to close that tab first.
Yeah. Literally driving me crazy. Jersey Shore it's a reality show where basically I live in New York and there's an area over here called the Jersey Shore where people tend to spend their summers. And they have summer houses, and it's a mixture of people. You have older people, families and stuff that go, and it's huge. It's the whole coast of New Jersey with like little towns, kind of like California, and you have Venice, Manhattan Beach, Santa Monica, like all that stuff. Each town is like its own little different world, but you have a huge demo of young kids that are from this whole New York, New Jersey area that go there, get summer houses, and just party all summer. They just go crazy on the weekends, and then they kind of come home during the week, and then they do it again for the whole summer. It's like a rite of passage. It's like something like all the Staten Island, Italian kids do. And they made a TV show out of it. And I was luckily just like randomly casted for it. We didn't think that it was going to go anywhere. We thought that it was just going to be like some VH1 1-hour special type of thing. And then next thing you know, it just became like a phenomenon. It became like this like part of the culture. And we went on to do 6 seasons of the first one. And then it got off the air for like 5 years. And then it came back with a show that it's on right now called Jersey Shore Family Vacation that I still do. And it's us as adults kind of doing like more adult things with our families and friends. And that's on its 7th season now of Jersey Shore Family Vacation. So I've been doing this pretty much since I'm 21 years old. And it's evolved a lot, like the show and what it is now. But that's what it is.
Why do you think it took off?
I just think that there was never anything really like it back then. In 2009, there was only a couple reality shows out. My production company made a very smart decision of making it like a comedy. Mm-hmm. Because it really was, it had a lot of drama and it had like serious moments, but it was just like it was a comedy and everybody related to it. Everyone in No matter what age you were, what state you were in, you were like, I either was that kid or I know a group of people that do that. And we were real. Like we were real and we were raw. We were actually getting the first season, like people were getting into fist fights like every single night. One of like Nicole got punched in the face by a grown man the first season. Like he did this on camera. Like everyone was like, "What is this?" You know, we were just authentically living our lives like there were no cameras there, and then the whole world just like loved it.
For the record, nothing is funny about getting punched in the face by a man, and that's not what I'm referring to. I'm going back to your comment about producers choosing to make it a comedy, because most other reality shows were strictly drama and strictly tension, and you guys really did make it funny, like ridiculous funny too.
All that was around was like the real world, which was like more dramatic. That what really wasn't a comedy. And then like Survivor, which again is like more dramatic and stuff like that. And then they had like other like random shows, like this show called like Tool Academy. Like nothing was just like a straight up comedy, or we call it a dramedy, but like just like a straight up comedy about this like subculture of humans, and we all bring a little bit of our own personality, and we call it speaking of you being a chef, it's like just an ingredient and that to this sauce of who we are, and we called it lightning in a bottle. Everyone called it lightning in a bottle. It was just like this thing that worked, and like we just kept going with it.
Do you think the show would still hit the same way if it started for its first time now, with the way social media is?
No, absolutely not. I think that, there's a million shows kind of like it now, and it was just the first of its kind. The TV world is so spread out now, you know what I mean? Like there was only cable back then. That was it. So like 9 million people used to tune in to Jersey Shore every week like it was the Super Bowl. 9 million used to tune into MTV. Like how crazy is that?
That's
And
wild.
now it's like, it's like people record things, they watch their things later. There's like 1,000 shows to get to. So it really is like timing was a huge part of it.
And I read, and who knows how accurate bios are, but I read that had that not happened, you would be an attorney.
Well, I was literally at the same time. I just graduated college with a political science degree, and I was taking the LSAT. I took the LSAT, but I was literally in my LSAT review course as the commercials were airing for the thing. So my next stage of my life was going to be to apply to law schools and try to get into one. I didn't really know exactly what kind of like lawyer I wanted to be. I actually did have I love politics, so I did have an interest in that. So I was thinking like maybe like working for the CIA or like something in Washington. Because when I went to college, I used to like intern for politicians and stuff. So I just wanted the law degree to kind of like just enter that world of politics in Washington.
I wonder how much of your perceived anxiety and what you call OCD, because I'm not going to diagnose you. I know you're working with a therapist, so I'm very careful about throwing the labels around, is you're highly intelligent, fast thinker, supremely aware. You love understanding things. You love asking questions. You are going down a path that is complex and very challenging and it allows you to keep using all of these traits that come to you naturally, and it really fulfills that nature of curiosity for you. Do you get that fulfillment, those same buckets filled when you're filming reality TV or filming a dating show or out in Vegas?
A lot of the projects I work on, I don't get any of that fulfillment. For the most part, reality TV doesn't do that for me like comedy does, or even starting my own podcast that I make no money from. Like I love my friends, and I'm very lucky. Like, Jersey Shore has become just like getting together with like people your whole life. They're almost like family at this point, and then just like documenting.
Almost like family. They're not family yet. Oh, damn.
Almost. I wouldn't get that crazy. Yeah. But yeah, so it's a great kind of gig to have. I like it. It opens a lot of doors, but no, it doesn't give me like fulfillment like something in the arts, like comedy or like doing a podcast.
It's been a great platform, obviously, but I am curious, like what you do with the freedom that you've created for yourself, with the stability you created yourself, what you'll choose to do with that. And like you said, you're doing stand-up. I do wonder, because I'm of the gauge of, yeah, we all have something, and I don't want to say wrong with us. We all have something that makes us feel different. And in my lens is, rather than thinking it's something that's wrong that needs to be diagnosed, it's something unique that needs to be understood so we can fill it with a role or a challenge or a lifestyle that helps us be us. There's something I read that I love, that what you are will never happen again. And for you, when I observe you and the friendship that we have, what you are will never happen again. And what you are, to me, has not been challenged in the way that you are uniquely yourself. And I wonder if that those feelings of anxiety sometimes can be your system being like, we need something else. We need that cup filled. Because when you're doing stand up, do you still experience anxiety? When you're doing your podcast, do you feel at ease? Like, how does that feel for you?
A lot of it for someone like me with this anxious OCD mind, you definitely need to keep busy, and you definitely need to be working at something every day and building. Building is a huge part of it. You know what I mean? Like we're like, I'm like an ant, like not like an ant like my mother's sister, like the insect.
Thank you.
I'm like a beaver, okay? And I always constantly have to be building something because, if you just kind of in the reality TV world, if you just, are sitting around talking about like stupid drama and, I don't work all year round, so like every day I have to be like working towards something and building. It's really important for me. And that's why my health and fitness got so important to me, because like that would be a constant goal that I was working on every single day. Right now I'm dealing with an injury and I don't even have that. So like, how challenging that could be, because I made like my body sort of like my 9 to 5. So definitely need some structure. And yeah, I'm constantly just creating other avenues to give me that structure, like starting my podcast. I always enroll into some type of class that I have to do in order to like, again, work towards something to build. But it's not easy. It's not like, for someone like me that doesn't have a 9 to 5, it definitely is a challenge. I have to make sure my hands aren't too idle and I'm not just like sitting around. And, I definitely feel like my cup is being filled more when I am doing the things that you named, rather than, but it's like, those aren't jobs. You got to work too. You know what I mean? So it's like kind of like,
But you could find ways to sign up for projects. It would be really interesting to see you in a reality show role where you're a host and something is in a different category, something that is maybe educational or something traveling around food, where you get to exercise these other elements of you. And I want to be really clear. I'm not saying this to cast judgment or say reality TV is less than in those ways. It's just, it's a different use of your mind. And I like the premise of Eat, Play, Crush. Yes, there's some performance around it, but the real premise behind my podcast is uncovering what makes people who they are. Because if you have a body, you're performing at some level, whether you're an elite athlete or an everyday mom. And the topics I've traversed have been mental health, suicidal ideation, using your body as a vessel, relationships. The one with Mark Groves is really great. We talked about relationships when you have 2 achievers in the relationship and 2 high performers in the relationship, because I don't get to hear enough of those. So selfishly, these are the conversations I want to have. So it allows me to not have to talk about gut health every episode. If I had to talk about diet and nutrition for every episode, there's no way this would be sustainable for me, because while it's an occupational hazard that if someone mentions health, I'm like, oh, what are you eating? Like, my brain goes into work. It's not the thing I enjoy talking about. It's just the thing I'm programmed to like ask those questions.
yeah, with me, like, I'm like Joe Rogan, but no, it's just like I have so many different things that I'm interested in. I can talk for an hour about mental health with a therapist. I could talk about gut microbiome with you, and then I could talk about a million different things. I don't want to like limit myself, because I did think about one time just making like the Keto Guido show, where it was almost like what you'd like a Tim Ferriss type of thing. But I will do that, and I'll do other things, just like talk about it all. Just me. It's just me.
Like, what other topics would you like for people to hear about the way that you think?
I think I want to circle back to those open tabs, and now let's close the tabs. So I guess like what was the things that you heard that you said you took away from it that you still had unanswered questions about?
Oh, when he was going into sleep and he was saying people think they need 8 hours of sleep. And then he was talking about how he had experienced his own. I did like how honest he was about his own challenges. I think it's really important for us to view people that help us or of service also as human. Like, people think I have a perfect diet, and I do on some elements of, like, I don't eat foods I know that are going to trigger my autoimmune disease, but I also sometimes will only eat scrambled eggs all day, and I'm like, I'm still human. Like, there are things that are difficult to navigate. And so I liked that he was talking about that. So he was saying how there was 2 days that he didn't get very good sleep, and then he was still able to show up for his patients and fire off the wisdom. He said he felt a little bit off for a moment, but was able then to deliver. And I wanted like to jump in and challenge him and be like, to me, there is a link between lack of sleep and heightened anxiety, a lack of sleep and your health diminishing. And yes, you can definitely still show up because we're adaptable in that way. I can definitely still perform my function. But if I were to sustain lack of sleep, that has an expiration date. And yes, be kind to yourself if it's not perfect every single day, but let's not mitigate creating the optimal environment to produce better sleep. And maybe he was speaking just to the lens of treating somebody with OCD to be kinder to themselves, but he didn't clarify that. And I was like, please don't tell people that sleep's not important, because it's hella important. And then, of course, I'm coming from the lens of performance in sports and how sleep is the number one thing we're trying to get our athletes to crush.
First of all, he would explain this a lot better than me, so I'm not going to speak for him. I'll just speak for myself in what you just said, because basically what he described about himself, about the not sleeping for a couple days, literally was what I just described to you about not sleeping on the reality show. And he's very honest, and a lot of people that sometimes I even go through these issues end up becoming experts in the field, and that's kind of what get them there. I'm not saying that's what happened with him, but yeah, like he knows about this shit because he's gone through it himself. But sleep is important. I feel 10 times better when I have 8 hours of sleep than when I have 3 hours of sleep. But the problem is the sleep trackers, the importance of sleep. We start to treat it like it's fragile. We start to treat it like it is something that has to be handled with like rubber gloves, and is something that is like so important that it ends up having a paradoxical effect and making us not sleep. So no one's denying that the sleep is great, and we wish, and he even says this, and can go for any of your problems. You wish there was an on and off switch that could just say, I want to go to sleep right now and wake up 8 hours later. But the body and the brain doesn't work like that. He calls it, it's an independent system that works on its own. There is no on and off switch to it. And the more fragile you treat it, and this is what I did, the more scared you are of it. For someone with anxiety and OCD, it's going to exacerbate the problem. So you have to start to look at it a different way. And you have to stop measuring if you are this type of person. And you have to just let it come naturally to you. Yes, set the table for good sleep. Black out your room, get a good pillow, get a sound machine. I do all that shit. Trust me. Like my place is like a fortress. But I envy the people that don't need all that stuff, that can just take a nap right now and get their required sleep. There are people that I know that are like that, So it's really just like, again, not when you say you don't need 8 hours of sleep, it's telling somebody, not that 8 hours of sleep isn't amazing. It's telling somebody that if you don't get it, you're going to be okay. You're not going to die, because that's what you feel like when you don't get it. And the more rigid you get about this stuff and the more of a perfectionistic mindset you develop around it, the worse it gets. So you have to be like, you're okay. Doctors don't sleep when they're doing their practices, when they're in medical school. People that run marathons sometimes don't sleep for 48 hours, 24 hours the night before, and then they go and their adrenaline makes them crush it. You know what I mean? And once you start doing that, the brain, again, it's independent. It does it on its own. It stops warning you about it. It stops warning you, you need sleep. Otherwise, you're not going to be great. You know what I mean? And once the brain stops warning you, now paradoxically, you fucking sleep. And you do get those 8 hours every night. You know what I mean? So the goal is to get the sleep.
Mm-hmm.
It's just how do you get there?
What did that look like for you when you started to implement that treatment and those suggestions from him? So the next time that hit for you, what did you tactically do?
So again, that podcast, we talk for 2 hours about not just the sleep, but this brain that's called an independent system that is going to do its thing and you have no control of. When you're a perfectionist and you have control issues, that's all you're doing is trying to like grasp some kind of control over your own brain. You know, like you don't sit here and try to control your own heartbeat. It's independent. So you have to look at the brain and the signals it sends you the same exact way. So once I started to look at it that way, as like it's its own independent systems, but really more importantly, it was like, even though this is happening, there are still pieces of me that are able to function. If I can't run, I'll walk. If I can't walk, I'll crawl. Even I use this for everything. I use it when I'm running. I use it with an injury. I use it when I'm fasting. If I'm fasting, for example, it might suck. In that moment, you might feel like, oh my God, like I need to eat something or I'm going to die. It's like, you know what? I might feel like crap or I might feel like really hungry, but my eyes still work. My brain still works. There's still bits and pieces of me that can like make this work. And again, once you start doing this, your brain stops sending you these signals. So like when I used to wake up in the middle of the night on those shows, petrified of the next day because I'm not going to be able to be myself. Now I'm just going to tell myself, listen, I'm going to lay here. I'm going to close my eyes. If I sleep, if I don't, it's not a death sentence. I'm going to use whatever bits and pieces of me. He calls it living off of the crumbs. I'm going to live off of the crumbs and just use whatever I can to get through it. And that's how the majority of the world is kind of walking around and living, everyone, because their brain isn't sending them these signals of like, oh my God, you have to sleep or this and that. The world is like they're going on vacation. They might sleep for 3 hours. They might not, whatever. And it just helps you go with the flow of life more. So once I started doing that, usually I'm literally asleep within 10 minutes of just that different perception change of this is not something you have to fear anymore.
Yeah, you're doing an inventory of what you do have. You're like, I've got my eyesight, I've got this. I guess I was frustrated with the idea of calling it crumbs. And I'm like, you're just living off the reserves. Because for me because words are so important to me, reserves has a positive connotation, crumbs has a negative connotation for me. But when you frame it that way, now I understand the intention behind it. And you're doing an inventory of all the reasons why this is okay, all the reasons why you're going to be able to be flexible and your body's going to adapt and you're going to be just fine. Because when I have insomnia, it is usually either linked to an extreme hormone imbalance because of my pituitary adenoma, depending on where it is, or there's some stressor happening with a contract or something happening with my family. Like this last year, we're at 4 or 5 deaths. I can't even keep track anymore. And so then I'll go into this spiraling effect with my sleep where I can't sleep. I'm covered in sweat. And then because I'm not sleeping, I then look at the clock and I'm like, oh my God, we have 10 hours of cooking tomorrow. And cooking for me is not like, oh, I'm just going to make this beautiful pasta sauce. I have to measure and do macros and micronutrients and look at labs that requires a lot of brain power. And I'm like, okay, we're going to have to make the best of it. And then if I don't get good sleep, I have things I do to help optimize myself the next day. But this is me trying to like show up for the moment and not be a perfectionist. But give myself an edge when I'm not going to sleep.
Yeah, you just described, I mean, everyone is going through that same fear of the next day when they can't sleep. And yes, it requires a lot of brain power. You know, again, sometimes I'm performing on stages in front of
Mm-hmm.
people. This happened to me when I was doing the Vegas show, and you know, there's like 300 people a night buying tickets to see me live. You know what I mean? And it's amazing how resilient the human body is,
Mm-hmm.
and how much we can adjust and adapt. And
Mm-hmm.
he's a lot of it too is like it's saying you're going to live off of the reserves or the crumbs, but that's what kind of makes the brain stop sending the signals. But once you're in the zone, a lot of times like it's not as bad as you think. A lot, you know what I mean? Like it's actually a lot. It's a lot like, yeah, you don't feel great or anything, but like when you're sometimes it feels horrible, like a splitting headache, and it's not a great feeling. But it's not as bad as you fear a lot of times. Like once you're in it, and again, this is not an ideal situation. You don't want to be going through this.
Yeah,
But
you're not
you can't.
sustaining this for the rest of your life.
No,
But
you don't. No,
what you said was really important. Once you're in the zone, it's believing that you can still get in the zone under those circumstances, because you can get in the zone. I think the body slants towards vitality. I cut myself. I don't have to think about it. It's going to start
Yes.
healing. Protein synthesis is going to happen. It's going to create collagen. It's wild to me. And so when like during the playoffs in 22, I was traveling with my athletes and I was running up and down from the kitchen to the rooms to the stadium, and everyone wants to eat at a different time. And I'm up before them and stay up late after them. And how in the world did I perform optimally to then support these guys who are performing optimally? It was me. I'm in the zone. Doesn't matter if I'm getting 2 hours of sleep, 6 hours of sleep. Definitely did not get 8 hours of sleep at all during the playoffs, but I just flip into the zone. And then for me, there's these other things like maybe don't drink alcohol when you haven't got good sleep. Maybe don't eat like an asshole when you haven't gotten good sleep. But being able to bet on yourself to get in the zone is something I think a lot of people would benefit from buying into with themselves.
Yeah, bet on yourself, and also trust that your brain, and like you just said, your body is kind of like a self-correcting machine, and kind of like wants to, like, you know, fix itself. Think of all the problems, you know, you've ever had. Like they work themselves out. Like your brain like adjusts and adapts and stuff like that. But the second you would have had to be in that highly stressful optimal schedule and started to put such an importance on the sleep, that's when you wouldn't have slept. You know, it's just it sucks that it's this paradox, but it exists.
How have you noticed, if at all, you being able to release some of the tension around sleep, particularly? How is that then transcended into other lifestyle choices for you? Or has it all?
First of all, to again, to try to fix this, which is your first mistake. You can't fix it. It's independent. You can set the table, you can provide a good environment, but there's no on and off switch, right? So to try to fix this, I stopped drinking caffeine, I stopped drinking alcohol, I stopped going out at night because I didn't want to like mess up my sleep and, you know, whatever. And my life has pretty much gone back to normal of just, you know, drinking my coffee, going out for drinks, having more of a social life, not fearing going into filming if I know that I'm going to have like a wild week of just hours and stuff like that. It's very freeing because now I'm able to do it. And it's not because, don't get it twisted, it's not like I'm doing all this and then I feel great doing it. You know, I don't feel great the next day after I'm hungover or I have no sleep or I have like a wild week of filming, but I am living off of the crumbs. I'm moving forward. I'm doing everything I have to do. And a lot of the brain is weird. You have to demonstrate to the brain that you're okay. You can't just say, oh, I'm going to be fine. You have to actually physically go through these things. You have to go through the hangovers. You have to go through the days of no sleep. You have to go through, and you have to live your life exactly like you were going to live it beforehand. And the more you do that, the more the brain just goes, I guess this isn't an issue I have to keep warning this person about. You know what I mean? So the more that I do that,
Yeah.
the more that life is just like adjusting and I'm just acting like myself again.
What I love about the way you've just framed it is it's almost in direct conflict with the popular sentiments and podcast with like Atomic Habits and the Huberman Show and even Tim.
This is how I got here.
Yeah, they're all structure. And then everyone freaks out and they have paralysis. I was doing an event in Atlanta, which ended up being a complete flop. But what made it the Atlanta trip so great was my driver back to the airport was like, hey, I saw on TikTok this thing about nutrition. And he's like, man, I go to the store with my wife and we have hypertension and we have diabetes and we don't know what to do. Like, we don't know what to eat. And I'm like, man, I'm so frustrated with these podcasts because they are terrifying people as to how to make a choice, how to be adaptable, how to find what works for them. And one of the main reasons why I wanted to talk to you particularly is I've got a good amount of people that follow my work that are all about structure, and a good amount of my people that follow my work that are very overwhelmed and are like, how do I just live a normal life? I don't want to have atomic habits. I don't want to be rigid and like do this and that. And there has to be a place for both. And I think it's important to learn the fundamentals and some routine and then pick and choose and implement it into a life and a lifestyle. Because the people that I know that are incredibly rigid are not happy. And if you don't have joy in your life, what are we doing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, I don't know how a doctor or scientist would actually answer this question, but I trust me, there's plenty of structure in my life. You've seen my place on Instagram. I'm very, I'm very quote unquote OCD about it. I love working out. I run. I'm care about my diet for the most part. I'm always like tracking my calories and stuff like that. I think it's just when, again, the brain starts to latch on to some of this rigidity,
yes,
and perfectionism, and starts causing you anxiety and starts causing you, starts to really interfere with your life. That's where I feel like you have to, give yourself a little bit of a reality check and be like, okay, like, is this really important here? Like, if I don't get this 8 hours of sleep with this atomic habit, am I going to die? You know what I mean? Or what's going on here? Because again, I think that maybe we are being so structured in some ways that the brain now starts to like warn you about those things because it thinks that they're so important. This varies in all different ways for different people. Sometimes it's their diet. I guess it's just having like an unhealthy relationship with it versus just like a healthy, balanced relationship with it. But yeah, you're right. The more that these things come out, the more that the trackers, I stopped wearing the sleep trackers. It was creating that association for me. But I have friends that wear their Oura ring and their whatever, and they're like,
I wear mine.
Oh
I wear it sometimes, and sometimes I don't because I want to be reasonable about it. But
if you can wear it, like my friends wear it and they're like, oh my God, look, like I got a 15% sleep score. And they're like kind of laughing about it and then just going on with their life, and their brain isn't like sending them a negative emotion about it. More power to you. Wear those things. But me, when I was seeing the 15%, you're in the red zone. You didn't get REM. I'm like, oh my God, I didn't get REM. Now what do I got to do? I have to get REM tonight. That's not healthy. I haven't tracked my REM in a year. Who gives a fuck? You know what I'm saying? Like, I got it. If I didn't get the REM, I don't want to know about it. Don't tell me.
It goes against the very popular saying, how you do anything is how you do everything. I used to always cite that. And I call bullshit on myself. How you do anything is not how you do everything. There are things I do in my life that they're non-negotiables. There is a process and I will not move from that. And then there's a whole other area of my life where I'm like, fuck it. I don't care what happens here.
Fuck it.
And so
fuck it.
It really is. It's freedom is on there. My uncle makes this comment. It's, I have celiac disease, so I cannot have gluten, full stop, period. That just does not work for me. But he made a comment where he's like, you no have celiac. You unhappy when you eat. Be happy? No celiac. And I have celiac disease. I'm not going to eat gluten. But there's an element to that of like, if you are so paranoid about what you're eating, how you're moving, you're only going to make yourself sick or sicker and create a problem where a problem doesn't exist.
Giving yourself a headache about having a headache.
Yes.
Which you got to realize that the first thing you can't control So why are you even giving yourself a headache about this, you know?
Experiencing this party lifestyle, seeing yourself in a mirror, realizing a change needs to happen, going keto, going super strict, and then working through these elements of your personality around OCD or perfectionism. Where have you landed today?
I don't think that, again, like when I was keto, there definitely were some, I always gave myself a couple of cheat meals and stuff like that. So I don't think I did have like a terribly unhealthy relationship with it. Also, like when you're physically feeling fit and comfortable and confident, that helps with your mental health as well. So I never really thought I had like I was a little rigid and structured and disciplined, but we're not saying there's anything wrong with that in life. We're saying that, is it causing a problem for you? Are you putting too much importance on it to where it's interfering with your mental health and other parts of your life? But now, just like not even having anything to do with that, I just got to a place that circled back to a more paleo lifestyle. I think that ends up being kind of like the answer to everything. I try to stay away from like all the refined sugar. I try to stay away from like, giant dishes of pasta. And I still kept those keto tendencies, but at the same time, like we always used to talk about this, like I always felt like organic maple syrup was healthier for me than like xylitol or like stevia and stuff like
Preach, I've
that.
been saying that. I wrote a haiku about that and it pissed off a lot of people.
No, you were right. That stuff is just like your body knows like what's real or not. So, I make like these like amazing like kind of paleo almond flour muffins that I kind of like live off of throughout the day. I'll still eat like a nice piece of steak that has a little bit of fat on it. I'll eat some greens if I want to. If I eat some like a truffle mousse chicken and liver concoction, I might put it on a piece of sourdough toast. Just like you can kind of just get a sense of like what your gut likes and what it doesn't like, while at the same time just keeping the calories in check. And I still like do a lot of fasting because again, my gut doesn't like to wake up and eat like a mountain of food in the morning. And that's just kind of where I landed. Again, like in a more paleo type of way, as opposed to strictly keto. And, it all goes back to the paleo chef.
So you're coming to a place of peace. You're losing the rigidity and the anxiety. And I feel like this is going to open up the table for the girl of your dreams to sit down.
Why'd you have to take it there? I gotta go. I'm breaking up. The Wi-Fi is horrible in my house.
The wife's what?
The Wi-Fi is bad. I gotta go.
But it's been a lifelong journey for you, and I think the strides you've made, while it might seem it's like anxiety and diet and lifestyle, I think that all falls into a place of readiness for the table to be set for a partner to sit in. I'm just saying.
Sure.
So
we could spend another hour on that, but
we could. I'm gonna borrow this question from my friend. What is something people don't know about you?
I think they kind of learned a lot today. You're asking the wrong person, because I'm like, my whole life has been documented to the world for half of my life. But
totally. And that's why the question is actually kind of fun, because your life has been documented and people have perceptions about you.
I mean, this is such a corny one, but like I draw. A lot of people don't know that.
That's not corny.
Like I'm an artist. I know, like I've said it before, but yeah, I'm like an artist.
Like pencil sketching or watercolors?
Yeah, like charcoal and pencils. Like I can copy anything.
Vinny, do you have anything to show right now on camera?
Not like around me, no. I would never hang my own art in my house.
Okay, well, I want you to text me a photo. I mean, this is my first painting I've ever done. I did it last year. I hung it.
Aw, that's so nice. What is it?
Yeah, it's mixed media. So some of it's spray paint, some of it's stenciled, some of it's chalk.
But what is the painting of?
It was me just sad. Yeah, it was just me abstract, listening to music, drinking bourbon, and being like, I'm going to be a painter now. Fuck being paleo chef.
I love it. First of all, the best part about Mary is that what I was drawn to you about is that you were a healthy person. And because you were a healthy person, you realized how important it was to eat meat.
Who would have
Because,
thought?
the healthy people that look like you don't eat meat. They're always like, into they're vegan or something like that. And I was like, wow, like you have like a person that like realizes like how important it is to eat meat that, looks like a hippie from Venice Beach. Not a
I
hippie,
take
but
offense to that. I'm from the
no,
Bay.
hippie from the Bay. And I was like, wow, like I fuck with this person. And then like, yeah, we just started getting steak dinners after
Yeah,
that. And it
Scopa is
was
the first place I took you.
Scopa and then charcoal.
Yeah, charcoal. These to my two favorites, 100%. And I
Yeah,
don't take
so
many people to these restaurants. Like it's only like the inner circle because like you don't want to invite somebody whack to your spot and then they
yeah,
blow up your spot type of thing.
there's like this association with like eating meat means you're like a bad person or whatever, but you approach it from a much more balanced place of health. Because that's like once you start having these conversations, these debates with people, you're like, okay, what if we lived on a farm and we raised our own cattle and grew our own vegetables? They'd be like, oh no, that's okay. I'm like, oh, so it is just like a kind of morality thing, but you realize that like it is healthy to like live off of the land like our ancestors did, and that's kind of I feel like what we're all trying to do in this modern world that we live in. Not everybody,
Yeah.
but people like us.
The controversial take that I have is that for us to say we're not going to eat meat is such an egocentric, self-centered, like we're just going to conveniently remove ourselves from the circle of life. We're
Right.
just making that decision. Like
Right.
we are carnivores, and I don't think you're supposed to eat meat in excess. I'm not like hardcore carnivore. I'm not Liver King. All these like ridiculous extremism. I view that you should be eating a balanced diet of micronutrients that includes animal products, and also being mindful about where it comes from, how it was raised, because it is still a process that is it hurts. Like when I'm butchering an animal, I'm very aware of the sacrifice. And I'm going to use every part of this animal, and I'm not going to waste any of my food.
But you've actually butchered animals. Like you put yourself in that position to
your food
to
has
feel,
a face.
to feel what it's like.
Yes. And I mean, I also have the other controversial take is if you are going to be a meat eater, you should have to butcher once in your life to understand it doesn't just come in this perfect little like round eye piece of steak in a plastic container. So those two takes tend to trigger people. I don't care. They're my opinions. You don't like them. Just keep swiping type of thing. But yeah, it's almost, I want to say everyone, but almost everyone that I know that has been vegan has become a meat eater, either because they recognize they don't feel good or they got very, very, very sick and they were forced to listen to their blood work. I do know one person that is still plant-based in his older age, and he is very diligent with his blood work and it works for him. And for him, it is an ethics thing. And I'm not going to argue that if you're healthy and you're making the right strides. But again, almost everyone else I know that has been plant-based or vegan their entire life has had to at least start supplementing, even with like organ meat, to offset those things.
Circling back to what we said, it's about being balanced, having, like you just said, like a little bit of meat. I don't think that it's healthy to go eat gas station meat. And, I think there is way too much meat when it comes to like just like the mass production of everything, but if we were all walking around just like eating like ethically sourced meat and vegetables from like regenerative farms and stuff like that, like I think that we can kind of sort of like create the circle of life and just eat like we should eat. And that doesn't include like a million fast food cheeseburgers a day. And,
it goes into a whole thing on
meat.
gratitude, and we're a society of excess right now, and like make the food so ridiculous and so big. And I'm like, y'all, we got to chill. We have this much time left before the world erases us off the planet. Like we got to chill, but that's a whole other topic. Tell people where they can find you.
So you can find me at my Instagram at Vinny Guadagnino, and I have a new podcast. It's called Something Went Wrong with Vinny. It's fun. We're building it up. Mary's going to be on it one day. So check that
That'll
out
be a
too.
lot of fun. Yeah. Thanks for your time. And that is it on today's episode. Thanks so much for hanging out. Your time and attention never goes unappreciated. If anything in today's show stood out to you, I encourage you to share it to social and tag me. That is how you can help a little independent show like mine grow. And of course, rate, review, and subscribe to Eat, Play, Crush wherever it is you get your podcasts. If you want to follow me, I'm at Paleo Chef on social media, or the show at Eat, Play, Crush. You want to stay in touch via my newsletter or get your hands on the gut reset, visit eatplaycrush.com. And until next time, be well, do good, and trust your gut.